Okay, we had a request to look at number 11 from 13.2. And so that is to identify the value of the 6 trig functions at 3 pi over 2. So the first place is to know where 3 pi over 2 is. And remember, the way we look at radians is that we have our unit circle that has a radius of 2 pi. We start here. So if it's a radius of 2 pi, each of the axes represents a version of pi over 2 because 2 pi divided by 4 is pi over 2. So 180 degrees is just pi. And so that means 3 pi over 2 is right here. And so the coordinates of this point on the unit circle is going to be x is 0 and y is negative 1. So if we remember that sine is just equal to the y value, then that means that sine of 3 pi over 2 is negative 1. And then cosine is just equal to the x value, so cosine of 3 pi over 2 is just 0. And then tangent of 3 pi over 2 is just equal to the sine over the cosine, or y over x, and so in that case, it's going to be undefined at 3 pi over 2. And then you take the reciprocal functions, and so the cosecant of 3 pi over 2, well, the reciprocal of negative 1 is negative 1. The secant of 3 pi over 2, the reciprocal of 0 is just undefined. And then the cotangent of 3 pi over 2, well, it's not the reciprocal of undefined, it's the reciprocal of 1 over 0, which is 0 over 1. And so the cotangent of 3 pi over 2 is just 0. We also had someone ask us about number 15, which is 8 pi over 3. So again, we come here, we look on our unit circle. And our unit circle, one full time around is 2 pi. And so 8 pi over 2 is greater than 2 pi. And so if I subtract 2 pi from that, that gives me 2 pi over 3. And so 8 pi over 3 is the same as 2 pi over 3. So if we remember when we talked about pi over 3, pi over 6, that's what that angle is. It is 1/12 of the circle, right? So pi over 3 is 1/6 of the circle. And so if I need 2 pi's over 3, it's going to be right here. And so remember, pi over 3 is 60 degrees. And so this is another 60. And so we get a 30, 60, 90 triangle with that being 60 there. Well, since this is 1, the short leg is going to be the x coordinate. And so it's half of 1. And then the long leg is going to be the y coordinate. And so if this is 1/2, this is going to be root 3 over 2 because we multiplied the short leg times root 3 to get the long leg. So the coordinates of our point are negative 1/2, comma, root 3 over 2 for 2 pi over 3. So then we just go through and do the same thing we did before. Sine of 8 pi over 3 just equals the y coordinate, root 3 over 2. Cosine of 8 pi over 3 equals the x coordinate, negative 1/2. Tangent of 8 pi over 3 is sine over cosine, and so it's going to be root 3 over 2 over negative 1/2, which is just going to be negative root 3 because the 2's are going to cancel there. And then we do our reciprocal functions. So the cosecant of 8 pi over 3 is just the reciprocal of root 3 over 2, which is going to be 2 over root 3, which equals 2 root 3 over 3. And then the secant of 8 pi over 3 is the reciprocal of negative 1/2, which is just negative 2. And then the cotangent of 8 pi over 3 is the reciprocal of negative root 3, which is just going to be negative 1 over root 3, which equals negative root 3 over 3. And so again, it's just a matter of identifying where on the graph is 8 pi over 3, then finding the coordinates of the point that way using our special right triangles, and then just applying what we know about sine, cosine, and tangent, and then the reciprocal functions of those.